Hey, I'm Angelo Pinto, and welcome to Let It Rip. We're coming to you from the CUNY TV studios in the shadow of the Empire State Building in New York City. ICE, yes, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, is back active in New York, detaining people in communities they have no business in. Armored vehicles, masked agents with semi-automatic rifles are turning city streets into Trump war zone. 4 U.S. citizens arrested during this crackdown on New York City's Canal Street. Reports are coming out that American citizens are being profiled, questioned, and in some cases detained because of the color of their skin and the neighborhoods they live in. Let's think about the cost. At a time where 21 states are entering a recession or about to be, and SNAP benefits have been snatched away, Trump has beefed up ICE. Some believe his own personal army, over $170 billion to be deployed on American soil. Joining us is former New York City Council Speaker Melissa Mark-Viverito, New York State Senator John Liu, and co-founder of Until Freedom and Empower Change, Linda Sarsour. I'm Angelo Pinto, and this is Let It Rip. So Senator Liu, we want to start with you. What's your take on what's happening in New York City right now, ICE being deployed, citizens being detained and attacked? How do you feel about what you're seeing?
On one hand, it's an absolute nightmare. On the other, we expected it. It's happened in other places, in other cities, and it's happening here. In New York City, where this city for 400 years has been the strongest it's ever been because of the continuing flow of people who come here in search of the American dream, immigrants from all over the world, making our city vibrant. And now we have these unidentified, hooded, masked individuals coming in, detaining people, taking them away without any due process, oftentimes not even knowing what the charge is. And people don't know where they're being taken. This is just horrific on so many levels. But unfortunately, we knew this was going to happen.
And what do you think about them specifically coming into Canal Street, into Chinatown with these kinds of tactics? Do you think they're picking particular areas on purpose? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, clearly they're profiling people. In this case, they came to Chinatown. Apparently, they were looking for African street vendors. Right. And so, you know, it just confuses people, it befuddles people, and that confusion is sowing a tremendous amount of fear as well as anger. I was heartened that hundreds of people came out, New Yorkers came out, outraged with what these purported ICE agents were doing, and they were showing support and demanding some kind of due process and explanation for what was happening, not allowing these, again, unidentified individuals free reign over our streets.
And Linda, how do you think the response was, and what do you think the response should be moving forward? Do you think the NYPD has a role to play? Do you think they can play it? Do you think citizens must step in? What do you think happens in this moment?
I think that we have our own law enforcement agencies. We understand what the laws are. The laws are on the book. We do not need a rogue federal agency, which, by the way, only started in 2003. A lot of people get all worked up when we start saying, let's abolish ICE. But we lived in a world before there was ICE, and that was before 2003. And if we could live without ICE before 2003, we could live without ICE right now. I think that we're going to be on the precipice of a new administration in New York City that is going to keep ICE out of New York, that's going to be able to stand up to this current presidential administration. And I think that it's the responsibility of New Yorkers also to be able to stand up to ICE agents. You have the right to record ICE agents. You have the right to ask for warrants when ICE agents are coming into your community or into your building or into your place of business. We actually have rights that we need to assert in this moment. We cannot be afraid to assert the rights in the Constitution. And let's be clear that the Constitution also does apply to people who are undocumented. The Constitution is not just for American citizens. So even the folks in our community who do not have documents, they have rights. They should have access to due process.
They should have some protection, or a lot of protection. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like there will be a conflict for the NYPD to engage ICE? Do you think they'll do it? And do you think that presents a challenge to kind of hold and force the NYPD to do something? Do you think they will?
The NYPD is not an independent agency in New York. They work for the mayor of New York City. They are one of several agencies under the control of the City Hall, under the control of the mayor. So it's really not up to the NYPD. If the orders are that NYPD enforce the law themselves and also potentially arrest ICE agents, as has been ordered in places like Chicago, the NYPD should be adhering to the orders of the mayor of New York City.
And Melissa, we've seen the NYPD in moments. I remember with Bill de Blasio, they turned their back on him in moments. How feasible do you think it is for the NYPD to play the role they need to play in facing ICE? Do you think it will create a conflict for the incoming mayor, or do you think they'll get in line and do what they need to do?
No, as indicated, right, NYPD is not a rogue agency. So it's not only about the mayor and the message and them being responsive, but we as the people that live here, that pay the taxes, that pay the salaries, right, and that they are accountable to us, need to support our mayor to make it clear that we are not going to allow that behavior in the city, and that we expect no engagement and participation. I know it was interesting to see that the NYPD felt the need to put out that tweet the other day saying that we had nothing to do, right, with what ICE was doing, yet they were managing the crowd control, they were somehow facilitating, and they were kind of helping in some ways.
So they're working with ICE.
Despite the fact that they're saying that they weren't actively out there rounding the people up and all that. What I'm saying is that we are in a situation now where you have an authoritarian regime that is not abiding by the rules, that is not abiding by the laws. But we have to be the ones that assume control. We, the people, and I am now a citizen, I am no longer an elected official, we have to demand, right, that those that are leading us and that have been put in these positions to represent us are laying down the law for us, right, that are really there to protect us. And as someone who is a true coalition builder, I want to see, right, more engagement of all of our elected officials talking to each other and organizing collectively. I do like what I am seeing, but I think there's more effort that can be put into having our governor and other people in elected office that have the resources, that have the ability, right, to represent us, to work more collectively, to stand up for all of us in this state.
Certainly.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear, you know, I don't think anybody's saying that NYPD should just go out and arrest ICE officers. NYPD should do its job and arrest people who are breaking the law.
But do you think
and that's what we're talking
mayor
about?
Of Chicago
Agents
is saying
who are breaking the law.
The mayor of Chicago is now saying that he'd like to see the Chicago PD arrest ICE officers if they are breaking the law. Do you think that's something that should happen in New York and other cities if ICE agents come and do the wrong thing?
That's what the job of the police is, to arrest people who are breaking the law. And they should do it without regard for who the person is that's breaking the law, like Tish James famously said and continues to say, no one is above the law.
Right.
That includes the president, that includes ICE agents, that includes NYPD, that includes each and every
So
one
NYPD should arrest ICE if they see that they're breaking the law. It's their job.
NYPD should arrest anybody who they see is breaking the law. That is their job.
Do you think they will?
What we have to be clear is that in this moment, we all have a role to get involved, because we are dealing with a rogue administration that is authoritarian, that is not abiding by the rules, that is not abiding by the law of the land. And therefore, we are the ones responsible now to hold them accountable and to hold the line.
And I think the question, though, is how do you get involved? And there's been moments where we've seen administrations come in at different levels, and when folks say, oh, this is a great administration, but when we look back, we said this administration didn't do enough, right? Does this administration need to come in and do more than we've ever seen to set kind of a precipice that, hey, listen, we're not going to come in and play soft. We're going to set an agenda, stick to it, so that way we don't get in a worse situation. Do you think this new administration has that responsibility, not just to say we're going to do the right thing, but to have a real agenda to do it swift, and force those in positions to comply?
The proof is going to be in the pudding, Angela, with this next administration. Zohran Mamdani has a big challenge ahead of him. And in the past, we've seen, for example, particularly around the police commissioner, I remember like it was yesterday when Bill de Blasio brought in Bill Bratton. who was the architect of broken windows policing, and he ran on a police reform platform. It was one of the things that excited New Yorkers, particularly black and brown people that had watched the rise of stop and frisk and policies of this nature. He brings in Bill Bratton. That was the choice. And now we have a mayor who's saying that he's considering or offering a job to a current police commissioner here. And I remember when Bill de Blasio became the mayor, even after bringing in Bill Bratton, which he thought was going to win him some brownie points, I guess, with the department, they still turned their backs on him. So it's not a matter of, you know, what we want the NYPD to do. It's exactly your point. What is the NYPD willing to do? Will they be a agency under the mayor that's going to follow the orders of the next mayor, who wants to protect immigrant New Yorkers, who wants to protect black and brown people in New York? Or will the NYPD want to be rogue? Because in the past, they have, in fact, partnered with ICE. I remember vividly an image of Jumaane Williams getting arrested a few years ago. I was there, and I watched people that had Department of Homeland Security on their arms. They were in the mix with the NYPD. So it's not that we're saying, will the NYPD do something different or new? They've partnered with ICE before in the past, and thank God we've had city council speakers in the past who have been strong about detainers and around, you know, trying to create some sort of restrictions around how ICE moves in New York City. But it's not enough if you don't have a mayor with courage.
And Senator Liu, to what Linda's just recently said, how feasible do you think this is going to happen with the NYPD? How feasible is it for them to stand up and confront ICE? Or do you feel like we'll see more of what we've seen? Do you think the new administration will have enough power to push them?
I don't think it's necessarily inevitable that there's going to be confrontations between NYPD officers and members of federal law enforcement or ICE. We do have to prepare for that. We have to train our officers. We have to get the buy-in. And, you know, the NYPD today, as far as I can tell, is vastly different from the NYPD even 10 years ago. It is much more diverse. It is much more reflective of the people who live in New York City. And there are, you know, the officers I see in Queens, in Brooklyn, here in Manhattan, and other parts of the city, I dare say, they have family members who are immigrants who potentially may be faced with the same thing. But let's also be clear. This is not just about undocumented immigrants. This is not just about street vendors. It could be any one of us with no reason, no due process, no explanation for what we may be detained for.
And Melissa, to this point about buy-in, do you feel like the NYPD needs to buy into whatever the next administration is pressing them to do? Or do you feel like they just really need to lay down and comply in order to confront whatever threat the city may be facing?
No, the NYPD needs to respond to the mayor, right? The person who has been elected by the city and needs to really be led by that, right? And if that is not happening, right, we need to send a message as a city about what we represent, what are our values, what do we stand for, and that our mayor is now, you know, putting that forward. The NYPD needs to take that lead, and that's the responsibility. And so that's what I'm hoping to see.
Great conversation. When we come back, we'll have more with our guests as we discuss the weaponization of the DOJ by Trump. I'm Angelo Pinto, and this is Let It Rip. Let's talk about the pattern, because this isn't new. Donald Trump has made his career out of attacking leaders who stand up to him. Now he's coming after New York Attorney General Tish James, calling her every name in the book. But this isn't just about Tish. We saw it in New Jersey with Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, who stood her ground and found herself targeted. We've seen this across the country, elected officials, prosecutors, and judges who dare to hold power accountable. They find themselves under attack. Still with us is co-founder of Unsold Freedom and Empower Change, Linda Sarsour, former New York City Council Speaker, Melissa Mark-Viverito, and New York State Senator John Liu. Linda, we've seen elected officials targeted. We're seeing this happen with one of our own, Tish James, the Attorney General. How do elected officials respond in this moment? How vulnerable are they?
I mean, if Donald Trump can go after Tish James, then we're all in trouble, basically. And Donald Trump has a history, his administration has a history of going against political opponents. And I think elected officials are going to have to take the lead to take a stand against this administration, because not only will it protect and defend them, it protects us as citizens. And Donald Trump is not just going after elected officials. That's just one segment of the population that he wants to target who are willing to stand up to him and hold him accountable. They're going after the nonprofits. They're going after organizations who are organizing, you know, any type of nonviolent resistance to this administration. You see Donald Trump defaming and slandering, you know, the groups organizing No King's Day, which were literally, you know, peaceful protests all across the country that happened just, you know, not that a short while ago. And so that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about the dismantling of the infrastructure that has been built to defend immigrants, to defend people of color and marginalized people over the last many decades. And he has a plan for it, and he is not shy about the plan. And as we know, he also, during the first administration, appointed 1 out of every 4 federal judges on the benches in many of these states. So we have to understand they were foreseeing this. He
set the deck.
He set it up in the way it is. And so, you know, we stand with Tish. We stand with the congressman from New Jersey. And I think the people need to be able to voice that so that they know that that these people are not alone.
And Melissa, what kind of message do you think this sends? I mean, the Attorney General of New York State, a very visible position, a very strong Attorney General now under attack. What kind of message do you think this sends to other elected officials to prevent them from responding to Donald Trump as he enters their cities? What kind of message do you see here?
I mean, this overreach and the abuse of authority and the weaponization of the DOJ, it is to try to get people to submit, right? It is about utilizing these high-profile people to say, like just Linda said, that if we can get to them, we're going to get to you, right? And so this is the point, right? The brutality is the point. This weaponization is the point. It is about putting fear and instilling people to not act and to stay silent and to bend the knee. Unfortunately, we've seen corporate America easily and willingly do that. They benefit from that, obviously. But, you know, that is the problem. The chaos is the point, to get people to be so overwhelmed. I feel overwhelmed on a daily basis by so much is coming at us in every single direction. That is part of the plan, is to overwhelm us so that people like get paralyzed in fear and not knowing what is available, what is available for them to do. So that's why, I mean, it is up to us to save ourselves to a certain point, but those in elected office, again, who have the power of influence and who have resources to do the research, to investigate the laws, to figure out what weapons we may have available.
They have a
figuratively,
play.
It really is to give, we need direction, right? People need to be able to channel that frustration and take the lead. So I want to see more collaboration happening amongst our elected officials, the different levels of government, the state, the federal, the city, talking with other allies in Chicago, learning from experiences of other cities.
To really push back and do something
We need to do that
different.
Aggressively in order to figure out how we move forward.
Certainly. And Senator Lieu, what do you see as an elected official? Do you see this threat, this pushback influencing other elected officials? Do you sense fear? Do you sense trepidation because these things are happening?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it is Trump's attempt to silence critics. No question about it. And also to exact some vengeance. I see 2 things here. Number one, the response from elected officials and people in general has been very vocal, not just here in New York. People have been vocal. We had thousands of rallies this past couple of weekends ago with the No Kings rally, and the White House response that they said, who cares? You know what? This administration cares. They have super thin skin. They try to put forward a tough image, but they're very thin-skinned, and they're going to see that the American people, and certainly those of us here in New York, have limits to what we can tolerate. People are not stupid. I mean, if ever there was the classic case of trumped-up charges, the charges against Tish James, you know, the Attorney General that was appointed and hired by Donald Trump. That Attorney General said he investigated this case for months and could not come up with evidence of wrongdoing, so he did not pursue the case. At which point, Trump fired his own appointee and then hired his personal lawyer to become the Attorney General, who then clearly was going to do whatever the hell Trump wanted him or her to do.
So he's obviously setting the deck in a way and targeting individuals who, as you've mentioned, may have kind of placed some pressure on him.
Oh, for sure, for sure. But you know, look, I feel America is not perfect.
Certainly.
But we have a great society in the long term. I believe in our democracy. I believe that the people are not they're not just going to be duped.
So you think
even
you think
even
things will
MAGA
shift
supporters.
in
There
a
are some
different
people
direction?
who are questioning what's happening here.
Certainly. Now, Linda, let's look at the historical context a little bit. We have DOJ targeting these elected officials, but we've seen DOJ target organizers, activists, groups like the Black Panthers, the this is not new, right? Is this a precedent that is set a long time ago that we haven't corrected? Right, we talk about democracy, we believing in America's democracy, but has failed many people. Is this just history repeating itself in a more outrageous way? And how do we respond to that? Because many of these systems haven't protected us, and now we're looking to them to hopefully protect us, but we know they probably won't.
You know, Angela, sometimes you just got to say the things that need to be said, even when we're talking about it in the context of even the ICE conversation that's happening right now in many cities across the country. It was the Democrats that bloated the budget of ICE, right? It was the Democrats who targeted organizers and movements who at the time were raising flags about the rogueness of the ICE agency, and in fact said that we were so radical that we were not to be listened to, that they were marginalized us even within the Democratic Party. So I want to make sure that we're clear that we're not making this a us versus them. This is not a Democrat-Republican thing. This is an establishment thing that we have to deal with. And yes, this precedent has been set, even on some of the kidnappings we see in New York, right? Using agencies under the Department of Homeland Security to target individuals in our community organizations, even things like weaponizing the IRS. These are precedents that have been set. You know, as someone who has organized and grew up in the post 9/11 America, I've seen this movie before. I've seen the kidnappings in my community. I've seen the targeting of businesses. I've watched raids right before my very eyes in places like South Brooklyn. I have watched organizations get targets, people's assets being frozen. This is not new to us. And so when I see people getting all riled up right now about what we're watching, we're acting like this never happened before. And because if you're silent before, when it's happening to one segment of the population, basically you're going to allow this to happen to new communities. So the question to our public, our neighbors, is to say, stand up now. Because even if the DHS is not knocking on your door, even if the DOJ isn't knocking on your door, if you allow it to happen to Tish, if you allow it to happen to key organizational leaders in our communities, guess what? You're next, my friend. And so this for me is that in order for us to build something different, you have to know history so you don't repeat it. You have to stand up for others so that it doesn't come to your doorstep. I mean, we should just be standing up because it's the right thing to do, but also remembering that at some point, if we don't, it's going to keep repeating because it's repeating right now.
And Melissa, to this point, that the Democratic Party has laid the groundwork for some of what we face and in many ways has failed. How does the Democratic Party show up differently in this moment? Do you think the courage exists, the new leadership exists for it to do something different because the need is so different?
I haven't seen it yet. I think a lot more needs to be done. And again, as I said, right, I mean, maybe it's, you know, too much of me to be asking, right? But I do expect that people that have more ability, right, to more easily use their platforms to do what they're supposed to do, which is to protect us and to represent us, do what they need to be doing. This chaos that's happening, and I think I agree with a lot of what Linda said, right? It's I think the alarm is because it's happening to people that haven't experienced this level of oppression in the past. It's a much larger swath of folks, right? But people that are colonized people, like me being from Puerto Rico, or people that have experienced some level of marginalization and oppression, well, COINTELPRO, we've had opportunities in the past for our communities, but we are in a different. It's a different way it's manifesting itself right now than in the past.
Yes.
But we see extrajudicial killings are happening right now around us. We see the level of chaos. We see the dismantling of government right before our eyes.
But the leaders that are being lifted up, the Zohrans, the mayor of Chicago, do you feel like those leaders have what it takes, are different enough to present something that we haven't seen? Do you feel?
Yes,
Do you feel
yes,
yes.
But the problem is that the establishment is trying to put them down.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you think they will be
That's-
forced to bend to the establishment and not be as different as
not
they could
necessarily.
be?
Well, it goes back to something Melissa said. That's up to us as a people. So the reason why there is a rise of someone like a Zohran Mamdani, right, or even a candidate like Omar Fateh, who's running for Minneapolis mayor against Jacob Frey, like the rise of these people is not just because of the individuals. They're great people. Omar is great. Zohran's wonderful. But it's not just about them. It's about a sentiment. It's about people are sick and tired of the same old thing. They're sick and tired of cowards in office that are writing strongly worded letters to Donald Trump instead of actually standing up to Donald Trump. There are many tools at their disposal in the United States Senate, in Congress, right, to go after someone like Donald Trump.
But they're not using
But they're not using them in this moment. They want to play nice with people who don't care anything about our communities and want to harm us. So I see the hope in watching new rising leadership. I'm telling you, 2026 is
should
going to
be
be
exciting.
quite an exciting year because you're going to watch a lot of incredible
Leadership
younger
stand up.
leadership
Yep.
stand up,
Yep.
even to the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party who has not learned their lesson, hopefully at some point will the hard
And
way.
Senator Lou, as an elected official, do you feel like the establishment will get behind this new leadership, or do you feel like
No,
the
I
new
don't
leader?
think. I think the permanent establishment are simply going to be ousted. They were ousted in this year's primary, not just in New York City, but in other major cities as well. Democrat or Republican, it's about change.
That's right.
Yep.
Awesome discussion. I'd like to thank our guests, and when we come back, I'll have some final thoughts on the path forward of resistance and change. I'm Angelo Pinto, and this is Let It Rip. Now for some final thoughts. What we're seeing right now, from ICE detaining folks in our neighborhoods to targeting our leaders like Tish James and other black officials across the country, is bigger than any one story. This is a modern-day COINTELPRO. It's about surveillance, intimidation, and control. It's about making people afraid to stand up, afraid to lead, afraid to resist. They don't just want to silence voices, they want to quell dissent before it even starts. But history tells us something different. Every time they try to break us, we build back stronger. So this is the moment for courage, for community, for strong, principled leaders who will stand up, speak out, and refuse to be silenced. This is about freedom. I'm Angelo Pinto, and this is Let It Rip.